Hi, everybody who's tuning in live. Katherine, Mayor Suarez, thank you so much for being with us this morning in this format, too. It looks a lot nicer where you guys are. I believe you're both in Miami than where I am, where it's raining.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day here.
This is not a virtual background, that's for sure.
But it's the norm, right? It's the norm. That's why you're attracting all these people to Miami. So, Katherine, you have a big announcement today. I just saw that it was written up, and thank you for bringing it to us here in TechCheck. But tell us a little bit what you are announcing today. You guys are going into a civic vertical, and General Catalyst is opening up a Miami office.
So we are announcing that we are starting a new vertical called the Civic Vertical, in which we invest in companies that are solving important civic missions or working with government, selling to government, augmenting the functions of government. And we were very inspired by Mayor Suarez's "How can we help?" announcement, because in some ways we think that Miami is the perfect example of government working with technology, and that's the inspiration for this entire thesis.
Okay, Mayor Suarez, did she reach out to you and say, okay, here's how you can help me? I know that it's been much talked about, even your billboard in San Francisco. How did this all work on your end?
Well, look, we're just so excited. I mean, General Catalyst is such an iconic company, and for it to, an iconic fund, for it to decide that it wants to expand into the city of Miami, which is a huge announcement in and of itself, and in the civic vertical, which is one where I personally believe that Katherine and her team have really made a wise decision in understanding the thesis of what they're trying to do. They're trying to sort of fill the gaps. And I think what happens is there are many gaps, and the gaps are larger and larger. And there are a lot of people in our communities, in our urban cities across America, not just in Miami, that are looking to the private sector to fill those gaps. And I think they create tremendous amount of economic opportunities, but more importantly, they provide tremendous amount of opportunities to create equal opportunity in our cities. And that's something that I think is a dream for everyone in our generation, and something that I think technology can be a huge proponent in solving, as opposed to the narrative that's out there oftentimes.
Okay, let's go back then. Katherine, what is the narrative that's out there? And then I think you have to explain a little bit too, what is a civic vertical? I know we've talked about this in the past, but it's not as easy to understand as some of the other tech verticals, and certainly not as mainstream.
Absolutely. So I think when you hear civic tech, sometimes people think gov tech, and that is not what we're talking about. We're talking about really 5 core areas of investment. So aerospace and defense is one, which of course is, long companies like SpaceX, Palantir, they work directly with the US government. National security, public safety is another vertical that we are looking at, companies that work with police forces that help in that area as well. We're also looking at transportation, which is of course a core function of government and very important to local cities and municipalities. We're also looking at education, both higher education and elementary education, which are very important and are very much augmented by private sector. And then finally, we have infrastructure. We think it's going to be very important for tech companies to tackle some of these very difficult problems, and that we can use technology to do things better, faster, and cheaper when it comes to infrastructure, which is very needed across the country. So we're excited to focus on those 5 core areas. And again, General Catalyst has been investing in civic technology for a very long time. This isn't new for us, but we're framing it in this way, and we're thinking of it as a bigger practice, because we think the next 10 years of technology are really going to be working on these important civic missions, that this is how we are going to solve big, hairy problems. So we're excited to announce it, and excited to be in a place that's really welcoming to technologists and people who want to solve these civic issues with technology.
When, Mayor Suarez, you referred to this, perhaps maybe some misconceptions about this space, or why hasn't tech embraced this more fully yet? Why is Miami the place to do this? And I'm kind of getting some implications that Miami's a good place and some other places may not be as good. Explain that a little bit.
Look, I don't like to speak ill of any other city, but I do think that there are areas that believe that the private sector causes these problems. And we believe in Miami that the private sector and technology companies can solve these problems. And I think that's a huge fundamental difference. We don't feel that the private sector and people that create high-paying jobs are causing homelessness. We think that they have the ability through technology to alleviate homelessness. We don't feel that they are causing crime and criminality. We feel that through technology and the use of technology, some of which we've already implemented in our cities, we can reduce crime or maybe make it zero. I mean, I really believe, and when I was hearing Katherine speak, I was nodding my head over and over and over again. It speaks to the very core of the mission. My mission, my personal mission for 12 years in public service is to try to reach the perfect city, try to create the perfect city, a city where every child born in the city has an opportunity to be successful, has an opportunity to be safe, has an opportunity to be prosperous. And, it's a dream. And it's a dream that we should all strive for. We should never think to ourselves, oh, this is not possible. This is just not going to happen. And things are the way they are, and we can, have little wins on the margin. I think what General Catalyst is doing is trying to do something that's a paradigm shift. They're not accepting the status quo. They're not saying that, we're just going to, improve on the margins. They want to make radical improvements in areas where you can create a more perfect society.
Yeah, and we're also seeing, this is something that we're being inspired by our founders. One of the things that we're noticing is that more and more founders are coming to technology to solve these problems. And a lot of those people used to go into government. I think, it's been much talked about that there is a public sector crisis in America in terms of talent going into government, talent going into the public sector. A lot of the talent is older. And a lot of young people look at what's happening in government. They look at the gridlock and they say, we want to solve big problems. And if we can't do it in government, we're going to do it in technology. We're going to do it in the private sector. We're going to work on education. We're going to work on transportation. And so I think, this is something that we've seen, and we're following the trend lines. And we think that there are very passionate, mission-driven founders who want to solve these complex civic problems, and they want to do it hand in hand with government. So I think that's the future. The next 10 years of technology is founders working hand in hand with government to solve these big problems.
Right, and Mayor Suarez, I know these are great goals to have, but you guys are still, Miami is still in the early innings. I know you want to make the city a tech hub, but it hasn't always been that straightforward. Bezos and Gates, they wanted to make Seattle a tech hub without the crime and without the homelessness. The same goes for entrepreneurs and founders in San Francisco and the Bay Area. But, sometimes no matter how hard you want that or how much you want that, something inevitable happens. And that is this gap between wealthy and poor and rising real estate costs for only some that they can afford. So how do you avoid those things?
Well, look, I think without a doubt, it's a challenge, right? If it was easy, everyone would be able to do it. It would be fixed and we wouldn't be talking about it, right? It's certainly something that is complex. It's multifaceted. Our strategy is multifaceted. We have a growth strategy over the next 10 to 20 years to keep supply at a level where you can keep prices down for affordable housing. We have a mass transit plan that we're working with private sector companies like the Boring Company, like urban air mobility companies to try to solve some of our gluts in traffic as we grow. Education is an incredibly important piece, as Katherine talked about, because it's the one area that provides as much equity as humanly possible. And so we have to continue to work together. And I think for me, it's really exciting to have General Catalyst come to Miami, because I think that is another step in the narrative that Miami is ready, that Miami is forward thinking, that Miami is the next wave of great companies. And I think when you talk to founders across the country, they will tell you that Miami is the place to be, that this is the place where they want to start their new companies.
I hear that a lot from investors and from founders of smaller startups, but it feels to me like, the bigger tech companies, they're looking at places like Seattle and Texas, not necessarily Miami. When do you think that you guys welcome your first sort of new headquarters of an existing tech company because Miami is appealing? Katherine, why don't you take this one? Because I know you work with a lot of founders and with a lot of big companies.
What I'll say is, I'm an early stage investor. So, and General Catalyst always loves to get in on the ground floor of things. And what is amazing about investing in seed and Series A companies is they become very big, very fast, particularly in this market. So, you can say, as our legacy companies coming to Miami, it's hard to pick up, or it's hard to make an HQ2, that sort of thing. But what's really easy to do is a group of 10 people saying, we want to make Miami the future and we want to build a company here. And you can see those companies soar. We're excited. We just announced actually that we led a Series C investment in a company called Material Bank that's based in Miami. We're seeing a lot of companies that were founded in 2017, 2018, either relocating here or doing very well here. So I think it's a very exciting time. And, in the next few years, we're going to see a lot of those smaller companies that you're talking about become very large companies. And that's exciting for us.
Okay, Mayor Suarez, have you talked to any legacy companies? And I know the startup scene is thriving, it's growing in Miami, but have you talked to any legacy companies that are considering a second headquarters or moving a substantial part of their business to Miami?
Of course we have. But before even answering that question, let me just tell you that Axios just published a study of LinkedIn accounts from software engineers and IT professionals that were moving from one place to another. Miami ranked #1 in the nation with 15% growth. The Bay Area, I think, had a negative 30%. I think New York had a negative 18% in terms of diminishment. Yes, we've spoken to Microsoft is taking a big presence here. We think Apple will be taking a big presence here as well. So those are some of the major legacy companies. But frankly, for me, and I think what's exciting is you keep seeing these announcements. I mean, General Catalyst, this is $10 billion assets under management. This is a massive fund that's doing things in the social equity for profit space, which is really, to me, the next generation of great companies. So for me, not that I have anything against Apple and Google and Facebook. Sure, I love for them to have a huge presence here. But frankly, I get more excited with an announcement like this because I know that the companies that General Catalyst is funding and creating are going to be the next Apple and Google and Microsoft in verticals that are new verticals as well. So for me, as I look forward into the horizon, into the future, I want to be the cities that define the future, not the cities that define the past.
Okay. Yeah, right. Getting earlier on in the pipeline. We've only got a few minutes left. So Mayor Suarez, I did want to get to Bitcoin because there have been no shortage of headlines and tweets. And I know that you've been a bull. You've been finding ways to incorporate Bitcoin into city finances. Where do you stand right now on Bitcoin, given sort of not just the tweets, but the volatility?
Yeah, look, we knew it was always going to be volatile, right? It's going to be volatile for a while, most likely, because there's still wild swings back and forth in terms of its long-term viability. Is Bitcoin going to be like MySpace, right, to Facebook and to Twitter and to Instagram? That's sort of the first generation of a cryptocurrency, but not the one that ultimately wins. I mean, those are debates that are raging on every day, and so because of that, there's going to be volatility. I look at some more of the fundamentals. You have 45 million accounts on some of these platforms like Coinbase and Gemini, 45 million people that are trading in crypto. You have an electronic currency that just a couple of years ago was worthless. And now one Bitcoin is worth 50, 45, 55, whatever it is, $1,000. I mean, think about that in terms of a storage of value. So do I think Bitcoin is going to be what ultimately wins? I don't know. But I do think it's important for cities across America to get into the game of what cryptocurrencies mean and understanding that there's a big component of cryptocurrencies that people don't talk about a lot, unfortunately, which is the fact that it's untethered to a central bank. And when you start to see governments, and what General Catalyst is doing here is finding companies that fill these gaps where governments fail. When you start looking at government policy, fiscal policy, and you realize what sometimes can be very bad policy and how that influences inflation, how that influences quality of life, you now are going to have people that are going to look to other options. And that's something that I think fascinates me.
Right. So what I'm hearing from you is that you're interested in cryptos, but you're not completely certain that Bitcoin will be sort of the crypto. Does that mean that you are, you're holding back on plans? I know that you were trying to hold Bitcoin reserves as part of Miami Treasuries. Is that something that's still planned?
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, we're not holding back at all. We're going to allow our employees to get paid in Bitcoin. We're going to allow our residents. And I'm very bullish on Bitcoin. It's impossible to predict the future. I mean, who knows what is going to emerge? Right now, I think Bitcoin is the most stable. It's the best and has the best brand and is the most recognized of all the cryptos. Whether that ends up carrying the day in the future, nobody knows. But it'll be
experimenting.
Yeah,
and you want to experiment. And Katherine, what are you hearing from your portfolio companies, Miami on the ground? Has there been any hesitation towards Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrencies or an embracement of Dogecoin perhaps over the last few weeks that we've seen, one very influential billionaire speak out on all sorts of things?
Well, I'd say it hasn't stopped people from moving to Miami. I mean, I'll go back to this trend that we're seeing. People are very excited of, and I think the broader story here is that you're seeing a mayor embrace something very bleeding edge, very new, very current. And you usually don't see, mayors accepting new types of technology or frontier technology. And I think that's just a strong signal. And that's what's leading so many founders to say, I want to build in Miami. I want to build it someplace new, and I want to build in a tech positive environment. So I think that's the exciting message that a lot of founders are taking from what's happening in Miami.
Well, I look forward to seeing how both themes sort of develop here and intertwine. Thank you both so much for coming on with us today. We appreciate it. And please keep me posted on all of these developments. Hope to have you guys on again soon.
Thanks so much, Deirdre.
Okay. Bye, guys. Take care.
Thank you.